Hello everyone, this is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and it is the third call-in. And let me check over to see who is here. Now we've got my two of my favorites, Lisa and Molly are here. And okay, Molly, you said you couldn't see my screen. Can you see me now? Just to be sure, and also can you hear me clearly? Do you hear big buzzing noises or anything else that's going on? Can see and hear you. Great, Lisa, fantastic. Okay. I just got home from the beach, and so I got out this message about the show a little later than I wanted to, so it may be a small crowd tonight. but it's okay, because I know the two that are with me so far always have something to talk about. So am I right? Yeah. Oh, Molly says it's good now. All right, that's excellent. And if you're here for the first time, please do like and subscribe. And also, if you want to join in any of the live shows, this is a live call-in. I have a live hangout every week, and also the 6 live shows a month where I talk about cases, and then you can join in the chat room. Just click on Patreon below and join and support the channel. All right, that's that. Now, oh, look, Lisa says no buzzing noises. Wait a minute. Why do I keep having to look down like this? Hold on a second. I'm going to screw around my screen and see what I can mess up. Okay, I'm pushing really slow. Oh, okay. Pushing like this, really slowly. Oh, now I'm disappearing. I don't know why I can't see anything today. I feel like I'm in a, is there something wrong here? It's like, it's the shrinking woman. What the heck? Why have maybe I need, okay, hold on. I'm having issues. Okay, maybe this. Okay, I'm gonna do that. Oh my God. It's, yeah. Okay, so I'm trying to get back from my vacationing time and get back into a thinking mode about crime, which I've been away from 3 days of just pleasant, freezing cold beach, but hey, you know, still I got away from the house with my daughter and my granddaughter, and so I had a good time, so. Wait a minute. I'm still a little low? Okay. I think I'm just shrinking. I swear to God, it's like, I feel like this is really weird. I don't know why it feels like I'm so low. Okay, I'll just move the screen. How's that? Am I back? Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm back, right? I'm not low anymore. But for some reason, my screen was at a slant, and I was having trouble reading. Maybe it's the glasses. Maybe it's going to be one of these nights. Better. Okay, cool. Now, which one of you has the hardest question for me? Tell me who's got the hardest question for me tonight. And then you call in and mess with me. So, I'm waiting. I got my phone right here. Okay. And your chin was at the bottom of the screen. Oh my God. All right. Enough of this. Enough of this. I'll get serious now. Okay. So, who's going to call me in with the first question? That a really hard question. I want a difficult question. Have you got a difficult question for me tonight? Come on, one of you have got to have a really difficult question. Who's the braver of the two tonight to call in? See, call-ins are a new thing, and it's hard for people sometimes to make the phone calls as opposed to chatting in the chat room, but to actually get on the phone. But we have so much fun when we actually able to talk to each other, and I enjoy doing that. So let me see. Lisa, do you have a question for me tonight? This is a call-in, so you got to have something you want to talk about with profiling and crime and whatever else. Okay, let me ask you guys a question. What is the one case? Is there a case that really you think is like the most annoying case you've dealt with, where you think that it hasn't been handled properly, or it's just ridiculous what's gone on with it, or you think it was the person who was convicted was not not guilty? Wait a minute, Lisa. Wait a minute, Lisa N is. No, she's not here, is she? Molly said Lisa N give Pat a call. Wait a minute. I did not see Lisa N come in. Oh, you are here. Oh, yes, you should. Can you do that now? Lisa Ann, give me a call. Yes, that would be awesome. I'm looking at my phone. Remember, we've got both a cell phone and we've got uh, we also have WhatsApp. So it's very quiet tonight. I'm gonna have to like start the show. Do it, Lisa. Oh, bugging each other out here. So it's hard to have a call when nobody calls in. You see, this is so you have somebody else to be brave enough to call in. I'm not that scary. I'm not that scary. Come on. And if Lisa Ann is not willing to call in, somebody else can give me a ring, and then you can always call in later. I'm working. Oh, that's right. That's right. Lisa's working because it's actually morning for Lisa, I think. So she can't possibly call in. That's right. I forgot about that. She's just sneaking some listen time in. But oh, you're retiring next month, and Lisa S says, I had a turn and I talked too much. No, Lisa, you can call in. Molly called in last time, and Lisa Ann can't call in. So Lisa S, you call in. 11 a.m. in New Zealand, is Lisa Ann. So it's morning, but she's working. So it is a work day. So yeah, that would be impossible. So Lisa asked, you give me a call. Call me. Because we had a great chat the other day, and I think you should give me a call. And it doesn't mean if somebody else wants to call in, all you have to do is say, I want to call in now, and then I say, okay, well, thanks I'll stop talking with whomever, and then I'll turn over to who else wants to call in. So it's not like you have to talk the whole time. You can just talk for 15 minutes or so, and then somebody else can call in. So Lisa, come on now, call me. I know we have a lot to talk about. We usually do. So I'm just waiting here for somebody to give me a ring. I'm going to put the phone right here. See, everybody's checking tonight. Okay, I will say one thing while I'm waiting, because it's just oh, Lisa S says, give me a sec. Okay, Lisa, good. I'm going to get you on the phone. I'm going to enjoy talking to you again, because you really had good questions and good thoughts. So that's the whole point of these. These are just fun. These are just fun hangout shows. So, but she needs a sec. Let me say. Oh, Lisa Ann, I forgot about that. Right, that's exactly right. Lisa is in New Zealand and working. So she said, give her 1 month. That's 2 more times. So we have another. I do this every 2 weeks now. So in 4 weeks, yeah. Then you can give me a call, and you can be part of this too. So some people, there's depending on what time I do this. Some of our people are actually asleep now because they're in the UK and they're in Denmark, so they're not going to be able to do this show. In 2 weeks, I do the earlier show, which is at 3 o'clock, which actually might be a better time to do this show, come to think of it. So I may do that. We'll have to see how it all works out as time goes on. But tonight I was just still driving back from the beach, so I couldn't possibly do anything until 7 p.m. tonight. So 633 or 633, Lisa, 633. Use that one. Good. Either one will come up, but use 633. Let's see. Let's see if I see Lisa coming in here. Still learning how to do this. This is yeah. Oh, really? No, that. Okay, here's Lisa. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, Pat.
Oh, wait a minute. I hear you, but not loud enough. Hold on a second. How about this? Oh, wait a minute. Which one's my? I'm trying to figure. Hello. Say something again. So I can see if you're loud enough. Say
hello, Pat.
There we go. Okay, that's better. I'm trying to adjust my volume so I
that's fine.
Okay, that's cool. Well, I'll see you can call in again. And Lisa N says both Benny and Gretchen promised to call in this time, but Benny's asleep. He's in Denmark. He can't possibly call in this time. So I think he
should have set his alarm.
Huh?
I said he should have set his alarm.
What, for 4 o'clock in the morning? No, I don't think he wants to do that. I think that he thought this was.
I get up at 4:30 every day.
Huh?
I get up at 4:30 every day. So, but everyone's different.
Oh, that's horrifying. I mean, no, I get up at 10 a.m. if I'm not forced to get up earlier. I'm not a morning person.
Right, but as I understand it, you're also up a lot of times at night reading and researching.
Well, that's a good way to put it, Lisa. Yes, I've always been a night person. I've never been a morning person. Even when I was a child, I absolutely hated getting up to go to school. And I just said, why don't they start school like in the afternoon? And I'd be perfectly fine. But I didn't sleep well back when I was a child. I always went to bed too late, and then I would go to school and I'd fall asleep on the desk, and that did not make the teachers happy. So but
Aw.
they must have loved you, like, you know, you were probably awake
In
and perky, right?
in school?
Yes, awake and perky. Yes, in school.
Well, my earliest memories of school are probably first grade. I don't really remember before that. First and second grade. Yeah, I think that most of the time, until you start to develop adult habits like staying up late or working an odd shift, I think most young kids are used to being, awake in the morning and
Maybe.
going to school. That's what I think. Maybe not. Maybe there are some kids who really are night owls.
You know, you might be
But
right.
that
I might be right. Just you might be. Yeah, maybe I'm just remembering high school. You know,
how far do you back remember your school days of?
not much of
How did
any.
I say that?
Yeah,
How
not much
far
of it.
back do you remember of your school days?
Uh, I do remember like a couple flashes from kindergarten and first grade, but a couple flashes. So I think you're right. I think my memory is probably high school, struggling to go to high school and sleeping on my desks in high school. So yeah, you might be right. I might have ruined myself later. It might have been. Yeah,
Yeah, I remember falling asleep in a sociology class in college, and I really fell asleep. I mean, I didn't fall out of the chair or anything, but I fell asleep, and I forget the professor's name, but he handled it okay. I mean, I was embarrassed, of course, but he said, well, at the time my name was Cirillo, but now it's different. Miss Cirillo, please sleep on your own time.
I, I can't blame them because I've been a professor, and the hardest thing about being a professor or giving any kind of speeches at all, like if you're going to a conference and you're supposed to do an all-day conference thing, right? It's really like doing stand-up comedy. Is you stand up in front of the crowd, and they either are with you or they don't like you, or they're falling asleep, or they could care less, you know. And I've had those different crowds, and it is very disconcerting when you look out in the crowd and you see that face that looks like bored, you know, or they're looking at their phone, or they're reading something, and you're like, and you start losing your train of thought because they're not paying attention. And do you know who the worst seminars are to give? What crowd is the absolute worst?
Tell me.
Law enforcement. Law enforcement.
Wow.
And if anybody's here from law enforcement, you're going to agree with me. So it's like they're a really rough crowd. So it's hard to keep them interested. It's hard. A lot of times when they're coming to classes, you know, they're picking up credits, or they're trying to learn one particular thing but not all the other things, or they just want to get away from the office, or they're sent. And so
That's a very interesting point, because see, they're adult learners. They're there. Well, I was going to say they're there because they want to be, but when you said they're picking up credits, well, if they're picking up credits toward a degree, wouldn't it mean that they have chosen to continue their education?
well, it is. That's true. But sometimes it's just, you know, you're going to different things that will help you in your career, one way or the other, or say, sometimes it's to make contacts. A lot of times it's just to, you know, hang out. And a lot of times when you're doing these classes, people are going, is it Miller time? Is it Miller time? You know, and it's a rough crowd. And they're just tough, too, because what happens a lot of times is, depending how long they've been on the force, and a lot of times when you go to certain classes, the problem is this is really very true, and it's a difficult part of issues of law enforcement training. So let's say you've been on the force for only let's say a year, right? You're fresh, you're out of the academy. Those are the best because they don't know that much yet. And anybody who comes before them, and this person's going to teach about profiling, this person's going to teach about cell phones, this person's going to teach about evidence, protecting evidence, this person's going to talk about chain of custody, whatever it is, right? if you're new, then you're going to take in all these things because it's interesting to you. You do need this information. But if you've been on the force for like 12, 13 years, you're sitting there like, oh God, here we go again. I've heard this before. And so unless it's a very specified topic, and for that reason you're there for that specified topic. But I know I've gone to a lot of these kind of seminar type things, and I will have just a place in that seminar, and then there'll be all these other topics. And so if they're not interested in what I have to say, then they just tune out. But they're a rough crowd anyway. I can't even quite explain it, but if you ask any law enforcement people, in the seminars, they're like, yeah, we're tough, So it's like, so that's why a lot of times when you get, let's say they're going to talk about cases that they've solved and profiling type things and stuff.
Yes.
They want to hear war stories. So what'll happen is, even like a retired detective will come out to talk about a case, and he'll tell war stories because he knows that perks everybody up. It's like, hey, let me tell you what happened here, and it's a good funny story. So, and the problem is, are we getting really useful information, or are we just telling stories if we're out in front of the detectives at these seminars? So one of the things I'm hoping to do more training for detectives. But personally, I'm going to send somebody else in, not myself. I want to develop the program and develop exactly what I want taught. But I actually prefer a law enforcement guy to go in there and teach it, because first of all, police to police, law enforcement to law enforcement goes a lot further than somebody who's outside. And I'm not law enforcement, so they do better with their own, shall we say? So I'm okay with that. I recognize it. So I'm hoping that when I get the program developed, I will have those within law enforcement actually be the ones teaching it, not me. So
right.
I want what works to work. So, but
you're definitely right about trying to keep a group of people, not bored. I didn't want to say entertained, but to be if they're there to get information, education, they shouldn't be looking to be entertained. But I think a professor, a speaker, does have a certain amount of responsibility to keep things interesting. I would never be uninterested in anything having to do with crime and profiling. I frequent antique shops and Goodwill and just garage sales. And I came across, I don't have it with me now, but it's an older textbook about criminal justice and law enforcement administration, because I am a regular layperson. I don't know anything about law enforcement. Of course, I know about the jury system in the courts and crime, but just like the guy next door knows, I don't know things that you know. I have no idea what things are felonies versus whatever. So I don't even know a lot of the terms. But I figured by getting this book, I can at least skim through it, start filling up my mind with at least the terminology, get familiar with types of crimes. I take little notes. I told you that I am retired and I do what I want when I want. I absolutely love doing it. I absolutely love it. I went to Barnes & Noble the other day. It was my second trip in, I think, 10 days. And I went to the true crime section, and they don't really have books on procedure. I did find one book.
That's not going to sell. Yeah, that definitely isn't going to sell there. Absolutely
I found one paperback called Forensics. The subtitle is, what does bugs, burns, blood, fingerprints tell us? So I skimmed it and I said, okay, I'm going to get it. I don't recall the author, but I can always return it if I don't find that it meets my needs.
Well, that does help.
Yeah, well, in skimming the table of contents, it didn't list cases to discuss the gore of it and what the killer did
Right,
and all of this. It discussed the evidence that they found and how it was used
right.
to I'm at such a loss for words. I'm in a
Well,
fibro fog, they
what you
call
point
it.
out is interesting because actually there's the trouble with trying to learn. It really is problematic sometimes, and there's there's textbook learning, okay, and textbook learning. Sometimes this is true when you're in when you're in college, where you go and they give you the textbook, textbook of criminal justice, a textbook of forensics, a textbook of crime scene investigation, and so forth. Uh, and there are two types of those. One is that it's written by I don't know, conglomeration of somebody from book publishing company, where they make this determination to make this book, and the stuff is fairly dry. It's fairly encyclopedic, just saying this is this and this is this and this is this. Then you have another version where you'll have one person or a group of people specifically write a book about, let's say for example, I'm trying to think of one right now. Oh, see, now I'm going to draw a blank. What's his name? Well, for example, Brent Turvey. Brent Turvey is a profiler who has written a book on profiling. Okay, now he was been in the field for many years. Brent and I have a long history of, we're not particularly comfortable with each other as profilers, but he writes really well. Okay. And he teaches really well. And so what he did was he wrote a book on profiling, which wasn't a book about profiling. See the difference? So you'll get like a publisher or something, and they'll write a book about profiling. For example, Catherine Ramsland, she writes a lot of crime books, okay? Books about criminal stuff, all kinds of techniques and stuff like that. She writes a book on that. She's not a profiler herself. You see what I'm saying?
She's not.
Oh no, Catherine Ransom, no. Let me see. Let me just give you an idea of this, because there's nothing wrong with reading something she's written, okay? But the question comes down to, so she's an author. Let me see. Of course, they call me an author too when you go to Wikipedia. So, I'm like profiler, then author. But okay, so this one says, Catherine. Oh, she's actually okay. She is a professor of forensic psychology. That's interesting. She's an American.
Oh, I did read that.
Yeah, she's a nonfiction author and a professor of forensic psychology. She's written more than 60 books. She's written all these subjects of serial killers, crime scene investigation, vampires. Okay, I'm not sure how that works. Forensic science, mass murder, sex offenders, ghosts. Ghosts? Wait a minute, what? And was a regular contributor to Crime Library. So now here's the thing. She's a professor of forensic psychology. Okay, so here's how I can break this down. Okay, so she studied. Okay, she studied forensic psychology. She studied it. She became a professor of it. Now, I don't know her entire background, but sometimes people go into things and they become educators, okay? So they read and read and read and read, and they write and write and write and write, but they don't actually practice the actual field, in the field itself. So what happens is they will give what I consider information, basic information, because they themselves are not doing it. So what happened with Brent Turvey and myself, and there's others too, is that we worked in the field. And as we worked in the field, we said, we got problems here, or we need better methods, or here's something that needs to be fixed. Here's the way it should work, because we're involved with it. So Brent Turvey wrote a book on criminal profiling. It's the one, as a matter of fact, when I do my profiling school part here, his is the book I will recommend for that.
Oh, that's good. Let me write that down.
Yeah,
because I have to get that.
It's Brent Turvey's criminal profiling book. Now, it's a textbook, okay? However, it's a textbook where he is trying to teach people exactly how to pursue and practice criminal profiling, methodology. And it's not just because he's read about it from 50 different authors and then he's gathering the information together and putting it in a book, in a textbook. But he's actually knowledgeable about what he's writing about because he's been involved in it. Now, this can be true again, let's say forensics, for example. So you might have a book about forensics, like you just pointed out. I'm going to guess that's not written by a person who actually practices in the forensic field, but somebody who's writing about forensics. So they do their research. They research about bugs, for example. Maybe they research 10 different books and they find out about bugs and forensics. Then they write in their book about bugs and forensics. So what you're getting is an overview, but not necessarily a deep understanding of what the issues are. Now, on the other hand, if you actually have a person writing the book who actually works in the field, then you get a whole different thing, because they're saying, look, it's not just that I read about this stuff and have taught about this stuff. I know about this stuff, and here's what I know. So those are the different kinds of books out there. The problem sometimes is people get those two things confused, okay? As to a book where they think they're learning a lot of stuff about something, but actually it's a book written by somebody who is not involved in whatever they're writing about. So I know, for example, Catherine Ramsland wrote a book about BTK, Dennis Rader.
Yeah.
And I looked at it, and I returned it to Amazon. I've downloaded it on my Kindle, and I went, oh my God. And the interesting part was she said she had actually gotten information from the district attorney. No, and she actually said she got this information, but I saw nothing in the book that was particularly in depth or of great understanding. It was like I got information. I read the other books. I got some more information from someplace, and I just threw it all together and put it in a book. But she didn't work on the case. She wasn't involved with the book by Robert Beatty, which is a book that was called Nightmare in Wichita, and he was there through the whole, I think, how many decades it was, right? He was there when it happened. He was a professor, but he was there when it happened. He was talking with the police. He was talking with the detectives. He was right involved in the middle of it. So his book has a lot of heart to it and a lot of understanding. Where her book, she wrote this 5 years after the fact, was involved in nothing of the case. But since she's an author who writes, how many? Gosh, 60 books. I'm jealous. Okay. Now she has 60 books.
I'm wondering how many of them are about profiling and forensic psychology.
Well,
because you mentioned she wrote books about vampires and paranormal things.
That's what it said here. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can pull her up. And I'm not dissing her in any way. It's just I'm trying to show the difference between.
I don't think we are at all. I bought one of her books the other day.
Which one? Say what?
I bought one of her books the other day. How to Catch a Killer.
Okay.
I haven't started it yet, but it's something that I've seen her on TV and I've seen
the
her
How to Catch a Killer.
And I like her.
The question is, well, that's interesting. How to see now? I'm personally bothered by that. I'll tell you why. Yeah. Okay. So I'm looking at this book. How to Catch a Killer. Hunting and capturing the world's most notorious serial killers. All right, let's see. It says, no two stories about the capture of a serial killer are the same. Sometimes the killers make crucial mistakes. Other times investigators get lucky. Okay. And the process of profiling, hunting, and apprehending these predators has changed rapidly over time. And she talks about different issues of criminal forensics, cyber sleuthing, DNA-based genetic genealogy, crucial tools like familial DNA. And then she talks. Then she talks about Ted Bundy and David Berkowitz and Rodney Ocala and so on and so forth. But again, I think what bothers me is that she, this is interesting. I didn't know this. She began her career as a writer with Prism of the Night, a biography of Anne Rice. That's where the vampire thing comes up.
Oh,
Right. She
can't
holds a
even
graduate
read any of the
degree.
stuff you're reading.
She holds graduate degrees in forensic pathology, clinical psychology, criminal justice, and philosophy. Currently, she teaches forensic psychology and criminal justice at DeSales University. Her background in forensic studies positioned her to assist former FBI profiler John Douglas in his books. Well, there we know where that left us. Sorry,
Part of the rat pack.
huh?
Rat pack.
Well, so this is my point. Just to keep in mind when you're reading something, I do not see evidence that she's really worked in the field on cases, and so she seems more like she's always been a professor and a writer, and does a lot of research and reading and all this kind of stuff. But does that help us understand things at a gut level? At a level where I point out one of my favorite killers is what's it called? Everything's in the other room, right? So I could pick it up, I could see it. It's one of my favorite books that the guy, he was from the Michigan State Police, and he wrote a book on serial killers and a serial killer investigation, right? And very few people read it because he couldn't get a big publisher for it. And it's one of the best books I've ever read because he goes through like 12 different cases and talks about all the errors that were made and why things were done wrong. It's a great book, and it teaches detectives what works and what doesn't work. And it's written by a guy who knows what does work and what doesn't work. So the problem is when you're outside the field in such a way that you're more of an academic, you're telling stories, you're telling stories and you're reiterating things you've read in other places, but I don't know that you have that knowledge and understanding of what actually is going on. And so I found when I went to college, one of the problems was when I got my criminal justice degree, my master's in it, some of the books that they recommended either were kind of like that. I'm like, I'm not learning anything here. That I didn't, I'm really not learning anything because I'm not getting the nitty gritty from somebody who can really tell me really useful stuff. I'm just getting what seems like encyclopedia stuff. And a lot of times they're tales retold. So if you're not involved in something, what you're going to tell is another tale. You've already heard it from somebody else. You know what I'm saying? And then you're just mixing the words around and then you're rewriting this stuff. And that's what I want to talk about with Cleopatra, which I find absolutely fascinating because this is the perfect example of that. So when I wrote my book, The Murder of Cleopatra, I wasn't just an academic reading everybody else's work and putting it into a book, So what happens, I've seen a tremendous amount of them, not one of them was spending any time actually reinvestigating, to actually investigate Cleopatra's life. They were reading all the books and then writing their own version of those books. So every few years, another book on Cleopatra comes out. And it says the same thing that the last book said, which said the same thing as the last book said. It's like a game of telephone almost, And then they quote, and sometimes they'll put, not quote, but they'll put in their, their notes, the footnotes, and in the bibliography where they got that information from. But nobody, they don't stop necessarily to re-examine it, or they haven't been involved in. Let's say you're actually in Egypt. There was a woman who wrote a book. I'm going to blank on her name, but anyway, she was looking for Cleopatra's grave essentially. And so she was digging up this particular area of Egypt. I went out there, I went out to the location. She didn't find it, by the way, but at least she was digging up some ground, I had to appreciate that. So she had studied things. Then she went to Egypt and studied more. Then she hooked up with well-known Egyptologists and studied more on the ground, on the ground. So when I read a book of hers, I'm getting some actual new information. I'm not just regurgitated from everybody else. And when I wrote the book, The Murder of Cleopatra, my stuff isn't regurgitated. My stuff was, I went there to study the architecture. I went to see how you build boats in Egypt. I went to see the canal, the Ptolemaic Canal area, the Nile inundations. I went there, and then what I couldn't get from there, I did study, I did do research through other books, but the point being that, for example, when I was studying how long would it take her to build a fleet of ships, okay? I didn't just, there was nobody who actually ever answered that question, because nobody ever looked at how long would it take Cleopatra to build a fleet of ships. Nobody looked at that anyway. She had a fleet of ships, and a whole bunch of them got burned up by some, she got attacked. And after that, people just stopped talking about it. But I wanted to know, if she wanted to leave Egypt, she had to have enough ships with her, right? How long would it take her to build a ship? And then how long would it take her to build more than one ship? And so what I had to do is go back in time and study the shipbuilding methodologies and the shipyards and how long it would take to manage to actually accomplish that. So I had to do a lot of research to come up with a conclusion on this. But what I didn't do was just read Joe Smith's book, and Joe Smith says, she built a bunch of ships, and I wrote, she built a bunch of ships, footnote, Joe Smith, which is just retelling. And so the problem is when we're trying to learn about crime, we're trying to learn about serial killers, for example. If you read about some certain serial killers in people's serial killer books, they never talked to that serial killer. They never studied that serial killer. All they're doing is writing the story of the serial killer from somebody else's story of the serial killer. So you're not getting anything new. It's just more recently printed. You see what I'm saying? So it's basic information, and you probably get the same thing just looking at the serialkillerinfo.com on the internet, because they're telling a story. As a matter of fact, this is also true for when one listens to so many of the shows, right? On YouTube, right? So you have people with a lot of subscribers, and they tell the stories, right, about a crime, but they're just telling the story. So if you want to hear you just want to hear the story told with a person with a good voice, because it's interesting. You just, oh, I never heard about that, serial killer before, or I never heard about that crime before. You listen into them, you wash your dishes, you're driving down the road, and they're telling you the story. And they have a good voice and a good way of telling the story. There's nothing wrong with listening to it. You can hear something, but it's not new. You can also see that story in 20, 30 other places. They're just retelling it, okay? So the question is, when we're trying to learn about actually what's happening with forensics and actually what's happening with investigations and methodologies and all this stuff, are we learning from somebody who knows, or are we just listening to somebody who's telling another rendition of what has already been written before, because they're writers, So it's a tricky thing. I'm not saying one shouldn't read whatever book you want to read, but there are a lot of people out there writing books which are just not really useful, in my opinion, or not very knowledgeable. I read them I roll my eyes. I'm like, yeah, that's not true. Yeah, that's not true, because they don't know what they're talking about. They're writers, Mm-hmm. So that's what I hope when I do the school part. When I show the books, I want to show the best books.
I want to interrupt you one second. I would like to switch gears for a moment. I know that you are very busy, and I am very much looking forward to your school. And in that very same vein, I would just like to know, when you approach a case, what do you do first? Like, what do you do first, okay? Just say you get a phone call.
Right.
Hi, Pat Brown, we need your help. Please come down, we'll send a car, and we'll pay for it.
Wait, who does that? Okay, are you talking about television, or are you talking about police case?
A real police case, forget television.
Oh, okay. Police cases are not sent. First of all, I actually did stop working on police cases a long time ago, for good reason. what I used to do. So I can tell you what I used to do. In the beginning, I used to accept people would a family would call, usually a family member would call. I did Montel Williams one day, and I got like hundreds of phone calls after that. People, please can you help us with, yeah, please can you help us with our case. I was doing
Yeah.
pro bono work, so of course pro bono is always a good price, all right? So so they would call me and they'd say, can you help me find out who murdered my daughter? The police aren't doing anything. And what I used to do in the very beginning was I'd say, oh, okay, I'd like to help out. And the problem came down to is that they would try to give me information and ask for my opinion based on their information. Their information was not necessarily accurate. And so what would happen is I'm giving a conclusion based on very, very poor information. And then I quickly learned that just makes no sense. So when people call me up years later and they'd say, I'd like you to work on this case, I'd say, well, you'll have to call the police, the detectives on the case, and ask if they will be willing to have a criminal profiler come in from the outside. I won't work on it unless the police bring me in. And
Okay.
people got very upset about that. They're like, well, they don't want to cooperate. I'm like, well, I can't do anything. I can't do much with your information when I don't know what the real information is. And so,
Right.
so what would happen is they would hire private investigators instead. A lot of private investigators, oh yeah, they'll take the case. You know why they'll take the case? What do you think?
I didn't hear you. Can you rephrase that?
Why do some private investigators have no problem taking these cases?
Because you know what, it's funny you asked that, because my next question was going to be, aren't a lot of former cops, retired cops,
Right?
become private investigators? So
Yes.
they have a lot of buddies in the station already.
That's not the reason.
Well, is that a good point though?
Yeah, no, this is no, it's very interesting. That actually isn't the reason. But here, one of the reasons.
What is the reason?
Okay, I'll start with your point first, and I'll go back up. A lot of the police might become a private investigator is a couple reasons. One is they've already been detectives, right? They like doing this work, so becoming a private detective makes sense because they're still doing the work they like, right? So that makes sense. Also, in some states, you can't become a private detective unless you've been a police officer. You have to already been in law enforcement. Yeah, so that's a problem
I
in some
didn't
states.
know that.
Yeah, and so what they do is they corner the market by keeping it that way, so that people like me can't just become a private investigator. So they corner the market on that. That's one thing. And the next thing is this: they're charging money, $50, $100 an hour. Now, let's say, for example, in one of my cases, the particular person wanted me to investigate certain people, okay? Which I knew had nothing to do with anything. But he wants them investigated. Well, I'm not getting paid. You think I'm going to waste, 30, 40 hours chasing down somebody I know is not guilty? Has nothing to do with the case? I'm not going to waste my time on that. But you're paying me $50 to $100 an hour. You want me to investigate the milkman? Oh, okay, I'll take a look at him. I'll go run his background. I'll go talk to the neighbors. I'll go talk to the wife. I'll bring him in. I'll ask if he wants to do a polygraph. Hey, I'm getting paid $50 to $100 an hour. I can kill a lot of time. I have had families call me up and tell me they've already spent $20,000 on a private investigator, and they'll even give me. I remember this one case, and they were telling me how great she was. She was such a wonderful private investigator. Blah blah blah, and I looked at the basic case. I said, well, she's wasted your $20,000 because the guy she's after didn't do it. I can tell you that right now, and I don't charge you anything for it. Guess what? I was right. They ended up arresting somebody else completely. They spent $20,000 for nothing. So, yeah, and so there's even some that are just simply criminal in the fact that they will encourage the family to keep at something they don't need to keep at, or to keep looking at something that didn't even happen. This happens a lot with the families who think their loved ones have been murdered when they've actually committed suicide. So what they'll do is, if they come to me, and for like a suicide cases, when they say they didn't commit suicide, okay, if I come back and tell you they did commit suicide, they're going to be very unhappy with me because they don't want to believe that. So if I'm a PI and they tell me I don't think they committed suicide, I'm like, okay, let me go check out, let me prove that they didn't. And I can again I can charge you $10,000 as I investigate every avenue that makes you happy. So there's a lot of unethical behavior going on with this kind of thing, whereas if you were truly ethical, you might have just said, there's no reason to work on your case, and you'd send the person away. But that's not what happens a lot of times. So, and it's not all private investigators. So, people always say, "Oh, you're trashing private investigators." No, there's a private investigators who do really good work. It's just that some of them will do any work that you want them to, and make you happy. So that's a huge problem. So what I would tell the family is that, look, if there's no place for me to go with this without seeing the actual police reports, there's no sense in me working on it. Then the second thing came down to be the problem was that there were police departments that did bring me in, okay? And so I would go in, and I would have access to everything. So I'd be sitting in the room, and you say, what did I get first? What did I want? I'd start with the very beginning. I want to see the police reports. I want to see the crime scene photos. I want to see the autopsy photos. I want the autopsies. I want the evidence reports. I want that first. And then I'll go from there to further investigation, interviews, and so on and so forth. I want to start with the crime scene, hands down the crime scene. So that's what I have to have in front of me. And I don't want anybody's opinion. Sometimes the detective will be taking me in and go, well, I know that. I'm like, no. I don't
I wanted to ask you that. Do you get a briefing from the chief, or I don't mean any, I mean just some person in charge of the case? Do you get a briefing?
I stop them. I stop them before they tell me anything, because the problem is I don't want to be influenced by your opinion. You might think you have your own idea who did this. So let me do this. Let me analyze the case. If I come back with the same focus as you, well, then I'm supporting what direction you're going. On the other hand, if I come off with something different, then that gives you an opportunity to look at what I came up with and analyze it and weigh it against what you thought. So you have, if you're bringing me in, don't waste my time having me regurgitate what you just told me. What's the point? Just get yourself away from me. Let me do my own analysis, and then I'll share it with you. And at that point, we can have all the discussions. But I don't want to be influenced by the family. I don't want to be influenced by the detective on the case. So I'd rather just let me take a look at things and move forward with that. Now, the problem comes down to this. This is what I found out. Because they're cold cases, and they brought me in to work on the cold case, and it has now been 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it's been. The reason it's a cold case usually is because something went wrong, or there's no evidence. One of the two, right? So either I will come up with the same conclusion you guys did. It's like you don't have enough evidence to go after anybody, or whatever. Or I have a great new lead for you, and I can support that with all this evidence, that information. But you're never going to get enough evidence to take them to court because it's too late. It's just that whatever might have been there because you weren't looking his direction. You weren't even looking at this guy. You were looking over here, and while you were looking over here, over the other side, the guy's like washing his car down, crushing his car, throwing away the weapon, got rid of his clothes, got rid of his shoes. All that happened because you were looking the wrong direction. By the time I tell you, oh, it's this guy, you're like, crap. We didn't look over there, And then you have a really bad problem. So let's say, and I've had them actually read my report and say, wow, this is really good. We never looked at this guy. We see what you're saying. We agree with you now. It's this guy. And then I would go away, and they would then tell the family I couldn't help them. And the reason they said that is because they could not take him to prosecution. It's too late. And if they admit that I came up with somebody different, if I came up with an answer, what are they supposed to tell the family? Oh yeah, that profiler really helped us, but it's too late because we went the wrong direction. Do you think that's going to come out well? For the department?
No, but there are ways of saying things.
Huh?
I mean, there are ways of saying things to the family.
No, that's called political suicide.
We decided to review some cases, and yours is one of them.
Right.
And we're having a professional criminal profiler review some cases and see if he or she comes up with anything that we haven't found.
It doesn't work that way. They only say that if they can pursue it. Because if they can't pursue it, the family will then say, you screwed the case up. You didn't look in the right direction. You ruined this chance for us to get the killer of my daughter. You're a bunch of incompetent idiots, and Pat Brown had to come in there and show you up. Like that, that is not going to go over well. So the police department's going to go, oh yeah, no, just hide that sucker, and take the file, and you put the file away, and you tell the family that she couldn't help us. She analyzed it, and we have information, but we're continuing our work, and leave it at that. So if I can come in and that we have the same suspect, and I can add to that, then what they can say, and I had a case like this, and what they were able to tell the family is she was very helpful to us, right? She came in, she was really good. We're continuing work. She was very helpful. She gave us some really good information, and we appreciate that she was here. And that's that. But you don't hear any more. So the family's like, okay, well that's good, Pat. Maybe helped. It's kind of in a weird way a thankless job because, the information isn't getting out that I didn't. Working on the case does not necessarily. Where somebody's not going to say, oh my God, Pat Brown was just fantastic. Here's all the things she figured out. So, and I'm not going to go, and my basic rule is not going public, when I work at the police department, is not to run it right out and say, hey, here's what I did, here's what I came up with, that kind of thing. So, the problem really is that the profiler needs to work with the police department in the first 48. Needs to be part of the police department. So like if I worked with, let's say I live near DC, so the Metropolitan Police Department of DC, right, MPD. Let's say they hired me as a profiler for their department, right? Then I could work alongside the detective as part of the team. And as they went out, on an unusual murder case, I would just be studying the crime scene photos and the stuff coming in, and I'd be talking to them right away. First few hours, and the next day I'd be right there. And then they go on and they'd be successful in their case, let's say, and they could just say Pat Brown's part of our team. And I don't have to brag about what I do on the team because they do good stuff too, right? So we work as a team. And that way, that would be the best way profiling would work. That's not the way it works.
Pat, excuse me, do you limit yourself to the file, the police files, or do you revisit the crime scene, or do you just look at the pictures,
right,
or do you talk to witnesses, or in other words, that's been done,
right,
the stuff has been pushed to the back burner, cold case,
right,
so you just really focus on the file, or do you kind of...
Yeah, that's a good question. And in the past, the best way I can describe this is because I am public about this case because the police chief is the sheriff in this particular case was an unethical human being. So I have gone public with this case. This would be the Superbikes case in South Carolina, right? The Todd Cole. Well, it's now the Todd Cole case.
Yeah.
He's not the guy who did it, but hey, so they brought me in. They did bring me in, and I spent a week with them. I had access to all the files. I sat there and I got all the information together, and then I did do some testing. So one day, one of the things I did was I did go out to the site of the Superbikes motor shop, because there was a piece of information. I asked them this question and they couldn't answer it, and I was like, how can you not answer this? The problem was, one of the suspects in the case, and a good suspect, mind you, he was the last person to leave the motorcycle shop. Okay, the last known person to leave the motorcycle shop. He got his bike and he put it, I guess, on the trailer behind his truck. The credit card was processed and he left the shop. Okay, and at a certain point, his truck was seen going by a convenience store, and their camera caught it. And there was a time on the camera, like let's say 2 o'clock, right? So let's say I can't quite remember the timing on this, but I'll make this up for this example. So the credit card, let's say, was at, 150, okay? 156 or something. Actually, the last shot, because that's actually what we know. The owner of the Superbikes was shot in the head, okay? And he was trying to make a phone call, right? And he got a couple digits, and he got shot. So the rest of them didn't go. So we know exactly, because of that attempted phone call, exactly when he got shot in the head. And that was the last shot fired. So let's say the shot was fired at 1:55, okay? And then this guy's truck passed the convenience store at 2 o'clock, all right? Here was my question. There are two of them. One is, can you get from the parking lot of that store, can you get to the convenience store in 5 minutes? Right? Can it be done? Because, if he can't do it, he obviously isn't the guy that shot the guy in the head, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what I did was I took I rented a sort of a sports car. So I sat at the driveway, getting ready to go onto that street. And what I did was I would wait until a car had passed, right? Because I wanted nobody in front of me. So I'd wait for a car to pass. I'd wait as long as I could until finally I saw another car coming. And then I would pull out right in front of that other car. And I'd step on the gas, and we start like a country road, and I'd haul butt down that country road as fast as I could get to that convenience store. And the first time I made it in 7 minutes. So I couldn't do it. So I went back, and I tried it again, and I tried it again, and I tried it again. I never could make it in those 5 minutes, or whatever the time it was. And I couldn't make it with my sports car. This guy had a truck pulling a motorcycle. So I disproved his ability to be the guy who committed the crime because of the time it took to get from the store to, from the Superbike store to the convenience store. However, here was the problem. And I asked this question when I said, okay, I cannot make it. I could not accomplish it. Here's my question. When we have the photo of him passing by at exactly, let's say, 2 p.m., did you check to make sure the time on the camera was correct? And, I don't know at that particular point in time what was controlling the time on the camera, the video camera. I don't know whether, these days it's more likely to be internet. I don't know what it was in those days because it was, ways back in time. And I forgot exactly what but I wanted to make sure, if you're going to say this guy went by at 2 o'clock, you want to make sure that the timing is correct on the camera. If it's 50,
yeah, you think of everything.
Well, it was important because otherwise, let's say the camera's off by 5 minutes.
Right.
Maybe the guy could get there in 7 minutes and still have 3 minutes to spare. You got to know. So that was a test I did. And
now the guy that they interviewed, I don't know what I watched. I think it was a link when you did the call-up case.
Right.
You put a link, and I watched it. The man that was the quote-unquote witness who called it in, you think that is the guy that did it, don't you?
I wouldn't put it that way. I would
Okay.
say he was my top
A good suspect.
Yes.
There you go.
Because I don't have proof that he did it. So I always want
Okay.
people to understand this, that when I talk about, hey, there's a good suspect, Even somebody, even if I'm pretty sure, I've got a couple cases where I'm pretty sure, like 99%, but I would ever only call somebody a suspect until they were proven to be the person who committed the crime. And it's not my job to do that. That's a police and prosecution job. And
So a really good profiler has to know how to say things, how to conduct themselves, and the right words to use.
I just don't want to get sued.
Come out like me and say he killed him.
No, I don't want to get sued. And no, but also just to be but just to be legitimate, I can't say he did it. I can't. What I can say is what the evidence shows. So in that particular case, what the evidence shows is that his stories changed. His stories were bizarre and did not make sense. His behavior didn't make sense. And one of the most irritating things about that crime was that he made the claim that he went there to pick up tickets to go to this motorcycle event. And that the owner's mother, who also got murdered in this thing, said she had the tickets for him. Come and get the tickets is what he said, owner's mother said. So he supposedly jumps in the car, although he says, for some reason I took a shower, which makes no sense, but does mean he wouldn't be there in time to kill them. He drives there, arrives at the scene, finds everybody dying and dead. And so I asked the police. I looked at the evidence records. What was all the evidence they had from the scene, right? I said, where are the 2 tickets? The tickets that he went to pick up. Why are they not in evidence? And they could not explain this to me.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, there's 2 possibilities. One is he found all his friends dead and he went into the business so he could pick up the tickets anyway to go to the event, which is pretty creepy. And if he did that and he was there when you came, those tickets should have been in his pocket, right?
Yeah, wow.
But you didn't check his pocket? So the crime scene itself should have either had 2 tickets there, or his pocket should have had 2 tickets. Where the heck are the tickets? Or, number 3, there never were any tickets, and he lied about why he went there.
That's very basic. When the police were talking to him,
right?
Can I see those tickets, please?
You'd think.
I mean, that's very basic.
Yeah, you'd think. So what happened was these tickets either never existed, or the police screwed up with the evidence issues, or they didn't ask him for the damn tickets and he had them in the pocket. Who knows? But that was a terrible investigation for that one. That was one reason. And then he changed his story, and they never went back to find out why his story. He said, the last time I told you what happened, I just made up half of that stuff because I was taking medications. So what?
He was what?
He said he said stuff that wasn't true because he was taking medications. So has his story changed?
I would ask if he not only was a witness, he's the one that called the cops.
Correct.
I would want a statement from his physician that he was on medication.
Well, there never was that. They interviewed him, and then I said, did you go back and do a third interview? Did you interview his girlfriend who was supposedly on the phone with? And the answer was that they never answered those questions to me. So the investigation was poor. I'll say that.
Very.
They didn't do what they should have done. They didn't check the video camera. They didn't find out how long it took to drive there. They didn't find the tickets. They didn't interview this guy properly. There were all kinds of things. And the case went unsolved forever until Todd Kohlhepp rolled through and decided he was going to, get caught being a serial killer. And then suddenly, Todd Kohlhepp confesses to the Superbikes case with a motive that's ridiculous. That they made fun of him one day, and he came back like a year later to kill him. I was like, what? So none of it made any sense. And then he described how the crime scene went down, and none of it was true, because I analyzed that whole crime scene, and he's completely wrong about everything. So, yet he got convicted of it, and now the case has been put to bed, and it's all good now. See, because Todd Kohlhepp is not only a serial killer but a mass murderer. Now, here's what the funny thing will happen. Speaking of those books, Lisa, see, this is so interesting about books. now there's books being written about Todd Cole-In and how he committed the Superbikes murder. And do you know who's writing? Who's writing those books?
Some of my favorite authors.
Well, who knows? It could be one of your favorite authors. It's a crime author who will watch the television show, which didn't tell the truth.
Yeah.
And talk to all the other things that aren't true, and they'll put them in the book, and everybody will believe they're true, because they're not involved in it. All they're doing is, I'm going to look that up right now. Let me see. I'm going to put Todd Cole-In into Todd Cole-In and see what to come up with. Oh, let's see.
Yep.
I'm going to have to. Oh, here. Okay. Oh, Devil Unchained is the horrible movie that stole my crap, and oh my God, they stole my stuff. Those people are so unethical. It's unbelievable. Inside the, let's see, let's see, I'm trying to find, there's got to be one with, wow, there's nothing about Superbikes yet. Huh, interesting. Nobody's written about that case yet. How about that? I was trying to write about that case, but I couldn't get a publisher to publish it because obviously not popular with the,
Maybe that wasn't his most heinous case.
No, Todd Cole-In killed 3 people. He was kidnapped. He liked to kidnap couples. So he went down for 3 people. That was one girl.
Yeah, I'm just looking it up myself now because I just was curious. He's, I guess, known in where he was living. Mm-hmm. He's known as a killer for those other cases, but other people in other areas, I guess he was in Arizona for the kidnapping, South Carolina for the murder, kidnapping, and first-degree criminal sexual conduct.
Right.
Anyway, I think that he's more known in the parts that he's from for those other crimes.
No, South Carolina. No, it was from South Carolina is where his big crimes was. Because in South Carolina, he did mess with a girl back in Arizona, but in South Carolina, he kidnapped a couple, and he murdered both of them and buried them in a backyard. And then he kidnapped he had this other girl and her boyfriend, and he killed the boyfriend and buried him in the backyard. And then he had the girl chained up in the back of the house. So when he got caught, they caught him with the girl in the back, right? So the girl is able to testify against him and say that he killed her boyfriend, and then they were able to find the bodies of the other, people. So he's a serial killer in South Carolina, in the area of the Superbikes mass murder case. He did buy a bike from Superbikes, but then everybody bought a bike from Superbikes, saying everybody. So what you don't normally have is serial killers who are also mass murderers. That's extremely, extremely rare. So that the problem was, once they got him and they found the information that he bought a bike there, see, you gotta understand, the guy named Chuck Wright, that's the Sheriff Chuck Wright, who I have no love for, because he's a liar. And I have no problem saying that. He can't sue me for saying he's a liar because he lied on TV about me.
Right.
He stood on TV and said Pat Brown knows only what she knows from the internet, which was not true.
He's probably a confused old man. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
What?
The friggin' liar.
No, he's just a play. No, he's a
sorry,
straight up
I'm going
liar.
to get you demonetized again. For my
Probably. But no, he's just a liar. And Chuck Wright was going for, he was trying to get elected again. And he's got a guy in his grip who is a guy everybody dislikes, and will hate, a serial killer they'll hate, who bought a bike from that shop. And my guess is there is a deal made. You confess to this crime, you won't get the death penalty. And that's exactly what Todd Cole-In did. He confessed to the Superbikes crime, and then didn't get the death penalty. Now, he tells a good story. So, this is the thing about, he's on videotape telling this great story about how he committed the Superbikes crime, right? But that doesn't mean he didn't, get fed information, or he didn't read information. Now, he actually, in my opinion, read my profile of the crime, because he said Pat Brown, he told the detective Pat Brown was completely wrong in her profile. It's like, why is the serial killer, why is your suspect reading my profile?
I don't know. I don't understand if people invite you in and then they insult you.
Well, what happened was with Chuck Wright was that sometimes in this particular case, before that guy showed up, Todd Culp showed up, I came down there and I did what I did. I didn't go public with it, right? I gave them my information, and I thought they were going to pursue it, and so did the family at that point. And I actually did get a call back at some point, and one of the investigators, and I said, oh, thank God they're going to pursue it. This is like a couple years later. But then Chuck Wright went on America's Most Wanted with a crime scene sketch, composite, and said, this is the guy that committed the crime. And I'm like, that's a fat lie. It's a fat lie, because that guy who they claim was in that they made that composite from was a guy who was just in the shop. There's no proof that he ever committed the crime. And he went and said that, and it wasn't true. And I commented that this was incorrect, that is not the Superbikes killer. There is no proof that it is. And that's when he went public against me and said, Pat Brown doesn't know what she's talking about, only what she read on the internet. So then I wrote my blogs called I read it on the internet, and then he had to come back and confess that I actually had worked on the case.
Oh, right, that's the one you said that you wrote that phrase continually on your blog.
As I read on the internet, as I read on the internet, as I read on the internet. Yeah, and obviously I knew everything, because I obviously did not read it on the internet. But I don't like a liar. I have a major issue with liars, and he's one of them. And so now that with Todd Culp, then the whole thing came out that Todd Culp said that all 4 of the victims were shot in the forehead, and that's how they knew it was the right guy, because only the police and Todd Culp knew that. But none of the people were shot in the forehead. So I'm like, so you're lying to the public. You actually told the public a complete lie in order to get them to believe that Todd Culp is the killer. And then I took the autopsy reports and I sent them. I had them on the blogs, I sent them into the media and said, look, this is a lie. None of them were shot in the forehead. So why are the police saying that Todd Culp knows something?
Right.
And only they and Todd Culp know this? Because it's a lie, because it's not even true. And not one would follow it up. Not one media outlet would follow that up. Which is, this is when people say too, they're like, well, Pat, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? If you have the proof, why don't you prove it? Go to the media. It's like, but I did go to the media, and they wouldn't touch it. And then I took $900 and paid for a Freedom of Information Act to get information.
Oh, right, you said that, yeah.
And people think that's a real easy thing to do. That, in any case, you could just put a FOIA in, and then you can get all the information you want. Well, I spent $900, and I got Todd Culp's, I think I got his a license plate number, and a couple other items that were like totally pointless and useless. And all the things I asked for, they never sent them to me, and I could never get my money back. I lost $900, and we fought it. We went to judges and tried to fight this what was, in my opinion, that started to be a really crooked criminal justice system down there in South Carolina. And we just never got anywhere. And so now what happens is, because we weren't able to fight, it'll just go down in history. Todd Culp will be the Superbikes killer. Nobody will ever know about the truth about the people not being shot in the forehead. Pat Brown will vanish. You see, this is the way it works. And then history will tell you Todd Culp committed this crime. And then all those authors will come in who weren't involved, and they will read the first story about it, and they will rewrite it. Now there'll be a section called Serial Killers who are also mass murderers. That'll be the title of that one. And I was like, and then what happens is you read that and you go, wow, it's really amazing, because some serial killers are mass murderers. You see, now you're learning a new thing, which isn't even true. So then we get misled. because we're not getting the truth. So it gets really tricky as to how do we get to know what person we should read to get the truth from, because it's always, just because you read it doesn't mean it's true, and especially if somebody's repeating what somebody already wrote, then a lot of times what happens is, the old saying, if you hear it often enough, then you think you're convinced it's true, because that's what you always heard. Cleopatra was killed by a snake. Cleopatra was killed by a snake. Cleopatra was killed by a snake. It just goes on.
Yeah.
And the people don't question it.
I have a question for you. It's kind of loaded because you probably might not have just one. Your favorite case to work on that, in terms of which gave you the most satisfaction, whether you were, of course, when you were right about it, but it could be that you were wrong about something, but yet you had such a sense of satisfaction with working with that case and working with others part of the team on that case, or just something in your career that stood out that it was like one of the most favorite, fascinating, interesting cases.
Well, I would have to say it's probably the Madeleine McCann case, because in the Madeleine McCann case, I was able to access the police reports. I was able to go to Praia da Luz in Portugal and see the actual crime scene area. I was able to sit down with Gonzalo Amaro and also talk with other people who were involved in the case, interested in the case, have been, so it was kind of cool, because there was a whole network of people too that were interested in the case, and so to be able to gather that much information and to see things personally, that I think was probably over the years has been a fairly satisfactory thing. Now, it's not a closed case, and it goes on and on and on and on in the same way it's been going on forever, with all kinds of fake suspects, but which is definitely a frustrating thing. But that's a very big case. If I looked at a small, maybe what I would consider a smaller case, I worked a case in Texas, which that was kind of neat, because I was on the same page as the sheriff in that case, and he was willing to have me. Okay, here's what first happened. I don't want to particularly get into all the details of the case, but a young girl was killed. I think she was 12 or 13, and the family believed that somebody outside the family, one of the neighbors, had killed the girl, right? And the sheriff was telling the family that he thought that the father of that girl killed her, and the father was in jail for something else at that point. But the family was very angry with the sheriff, because they're like, he's just trying to attack us, and to say we're bad parents, and he's not going out there and looking for the real killer. He's just saying, oh, because my husband is not the greatest guy in the world, that he did this terrible thing, And so they were very adamant against the sheriff. That's one of the reasons they wanted me to come in. The family had called me and said, we don't trust this guy, he's after our family, blah, blah, blah. So I came in, and I had total access. The sheriff gave me total access, and I analyzed that case, and I came up with the same thing the sheriff came up with, that the dad did it. So that was where the evidence pointed anyway. Only what I thought was some of the information about how it happened was not correct. So when I analyzed the case, then I was able to put together evidence to support why I thought the father was the most likely suspect, as opposed to just saying he was. You know what I'm saying? So then I brought the family together, and I put them all in the room with me, and I said, look, I'm going to explain this as carefully as I can. And by the time I finished, they all believed me. And the sheriff was very happy, because he said, I can't believe you got them to listen. But the way you analyzed the case and were able to present it to them made a difference. And then the sheriff was willing to do something else too. And that was, I was writing to the father. I said, here's my plan. I think I can get him to confess. And what I wanted to him to confess to was a lesser crime in order to get him, you know, to admit he was with her when she died, right? So what I presented myself as was an idiot. You know, I presented myself as like the family brought me in, and I do TV work, you know, and I, you know, kind of made him think a ditz, right? And I looked at this crime scene and I'm like, you know, there's no way this man did this to his daughter. I say it's very clear to me and so I presented this. My analysis was that it was an accidental thing, right? It's clearly you were bringing her home and then this happened, clearly. So I'm sitting there thinking, he's going to sit there in prison, read this letter and go, the woman's an idiot. But hey, this will work for me, you know? The sheriff believes this woman, and she's an idiot. And I can get myself to, you know, and he's going to go along with her that it'll be an accidental death. So I got everybody in on it. So I had even like one of the uncles, so I had this whole program where the uncle wrote to the guy in the beginning and said things. So he was like, everybody was like thinking I was going to help the family, you know what I mean? And we had it all planned. The guy wrote back and everything. He wrote back to me. I was going to go interview him in prison, and mic'd up and taped the interview and get him to confess to the lesser crime. And then the prosecutor shot it down and wouldn't allow it to happen. And that was the end of that, and it's still an unsolved crime.
Oh.
It was apparently.
Oh, how disappointing.
Oh well, you're telling me. I mean, it was so perfectly set up. Essentially, it became a political issue. There was a political who was going for election and all that stuff, and
right.
I think that this guy didn't want the sheriff to come out on top, so that was the end of it. So it's been an unsolved case ever since. So very frustrating at that. What was very satisfying was that I was able to analyze it without any pressure. I wasn't analyzing it in favor of the sheriff's determination. I wasn't analyzing it in favor of the family's determination. I analyzed this completely separately, but I came up with enough evidence to be able to support much better, I think, the analysis of why he did it, and then to bring the family over on my side, and then to get the sheriff to cooperate in a whole kind of a sting thing. It was all very, very cool until politics intervened. And, you know, politics intervenes a lot. And it's got to be one of the most frustrating things ever, because I can't tell you how many times politics has been an issue. That it doesn't matter what the truth is. It doesn't matter about justice. It matters about politics. And the problem is, media is so wrapped up with politics that a lot of times, again, you can't get the proper, truthful information. And, you know, so we often often history just is a collection of information we can't be sure is actually true, you know. So that's what's so difficult. But for me, I'm not so concerned about whether I come off looking good or I don't come off looking good, whether it's right or wrong, but that when we incorrectly learn stuff, or we learn the incorrect things, then that's what we use to then, you know, base our future understanding of, our future analysis. So it's not a good idea to learn the wrong things, you know. So that's why I'm bothered by when we don't have the truth. So we can say, okay, this is what really happened, you know. And if it really happened, then we do have some information. We can then say, okay, how did the police handle it? What evidence was there? How did this guy confess? And all these good things. But if it's not true, then we just believe something that's garbage. You know, like even simple things like Ted Bundy was a smart serial killer. No, he wasn't. He wasn't smart. It was just bad investigative methods, you know. So if we know that, then we can improve our investigative methods, rather than simply say, well, he was so smart, that's why we couldn't catch him. No, that wasn't true, you know. So I have a problem with, you know, things that come down and I know are not true, and I can't, you know, it's just nothing you can do about it. You can't, even, it's not a matter of proving it. You can prove things and still can't get it out there. And that's just frustrating to me. Like say the FOIA thing. Oh, just get FOIA. I've done FOIA only twice, and I've failed 2 times to get the information with a FOIA request. And I will try. I would like to get one for the BTK crime. I would like to get the FOIA request. I would like to put in a FOIA request for the police reports on the Otero house, the evidence collection on the Otero house. I would like to get the. Then I want to get the whole evidence, the whole chain of custody and testing evidence, how they did each part of that. Because let me can you see me on screen here?
Yeah.
I want to show something very simple. So just on that, and this is why again I say it's hard to get truthful information sometimes. So let me see. So this book, for example, this is called Tainting Evidence. These are inside the FBI crime lab. And this was written by, let's see, these are things that went wrong with the labs, because we just believe that the lab does something and it's right. Now, once in a while the Innocence Project will roll along and say it wasn't, but for example, it says here, in the United States we take science as gospel. The public perception is that faking science is rare. The truth is it happens all the time. That was said by Ray Taylor, who's a forensic pathology expert and Texas lawyer. It happens all the time. And then look at later on in the book, it says this. They're talking about a particular lab thing here. The contention would be that it had been degraded. This is the DNA, right? The contention would be that it had been degraded, contaminated, and switched in a lab. That Scheck, now this is Barry Scheck, who does a lot of this stuff, now labeled a cesspool of PCR contamination. Now listen to it again. Degraded, DNA that's degraded, DNA that's contaminated, and switched. Now, I talked about that with the BTK case of Dennis Rader, because there was the DNA in the Dennis Rader case, the Otero part of the crime was supposed to be degraded to the point it could not be used to link to anything. Now, all of a sudden when Rader came along, suddenly the DNA that was from the Otero case, that was the 4 people that were murdered in their home, the Dozie Otero supposedly had semen on her leg, but suddenly they had semen on the floor. And I'm like, really? Never heard about that before. And suddenly that's tested, and lo and behold, it matches Dennis Rader. And if you read on the later book, of course, John Douglas now says there's a puddle on the floor. A puddle? Where's the puddle?
Right.
But anyway, but here's how simple it is. Here is Nancy Fox's DNA. This is Nancy Fox's crime scene. Nancy Fox has legitimate BTK DNA. This is the Otero crime scene. Now, what did you just see?
Oh.
This is Nancy Fox.
Jesus.
This is the Otero crime scene.
Oh.
See how easy that is to contaminate?
That's just like, and human beings are working in these labs, not, they're preparing all of these specimens to be put through the machines and things like that. So there is always room for this stuff.
That could be it. It could be, there can be contamination. But as he also pointed out, it can be fraud. You could also say, this is Dennis Rader's DNA. This is the Otero crime scene floor. Oh, look, they match.
Right.
Now, this is simplified. But there is I don't have proof that there wasn't contamination or there wasn't outright fraud, that somebody just simply did that, and then now this is tested and it comes out to be the same. So you know, do I know whether that swab was ever possibly mixed with something else so that it would come up that way? Now, people say, oh, come on, that doesn't happen. It does happen. It does happen, but people don't believe it happens, but it does happen. So I'm not saying in this case it happened, but here's what I would like to know. I would like to, if the proper information exists, and that may not even be true, I would first want to see that, I would want the FOIA request to come up with the Otero floor and the Otero collection of evidence. Now, there was
Yeah.
evidence on Josie's leg, but that's from the autopsy. And I know that's true, and I know that was degraded. That was never used to link to Dennis Rader because it was degraded, as I always knew it was. But now, all of a sudden, there's something from the floor. I want to know in the police report and in the evidence collection, did they actually collect evidence off the floor? Then, where was that evidence stored for how long?
Yeah.
How was it stored? Then, when was it tested? How was it tested? You know, I would like to know these things, and I could use a FOIA request, but I don't think I'll ever get it. I don't think they'll ever give it to me. So that's the problem. So people will say, well, why couldn't you just get that? Well, I'd like to know why the summary of evidence, nobody even saw that even after it was filed. Why did nobody know about it for years? Where'd that summary of evidence go? Why during the trial did Landwehr say that there was evidence that matched 2 of the Otero crime scenes when it should have said 3? Because an Otero would be the 3rd one, but Landwehr said 2. So it's like things are so confusing. Now, it doesn't mean Dennis Rader isn't the original BTK. The problem is there's very fishy stuff going on with the Otero crime scene.
There's several holes, and
Yes.
unless those things are
Plugged?
the ducks are lined up in a row, it doesn't. It just leaves me feeling a big question in my mind.
Well, it might leave you with when most people are going to say, oh, Pat, you're just being ridiculous. That's a conspiracy theory. See, this is what happens. So I have a personal viewpoint because I actually had something to do with this case later on, mind you. But I did go to Wichita. So I'm not Catherine Ranslam writing from a distance and asking the DA to tell me what to write. She asked, Nola, we'll be friends. Nola said, sure, we'll be friends, Catherine. Here's what you should write. And Catherine writes it because she doesn't question it. I wrote to Nola, and she's like, go to hell. Why wouldn't she answer my questions? Because she didn't want to give me those answers, in my opinion. So I have questions because I know better. And I would like to have proof because I have questions. But to the majority of the public who will read... Yeah.
Aren't cold cases public information?
Really? You mean the FOIA request that I made that was a closed case and they took $900?
And they send you what they want.
Correct. And guess what? See, here's the thing.
God.
How do you fight that? Now, I'll tell you how you fight it. You can fight it if you are CNN. If CNN wants to do a story, and CNN can put their CNN lawyers, if the Innocence Project can nail people with lawyers and huge amounts of money, yes, they can get information. But me, I don't have that kind of money or that kind of political power or that kind of media power. So they just tell me to go jump. And unless I can get somebody to back me, some really rich whatever to back me, some hugely politically strong something, nobody's going to listen to me, except I'm on YouTube and you are maybe, but you know what I'm saying. So what happens is the little person cannot often get the information unless it becomes a political football. So if it's a political issue, like a death penalty issue and the Innocence Project wants to prove something, they'll put everything behind it. But you take BTK, everybody is happy Dennis Rader is BTK. We're happy. Finally, the stupid case is closed. The police are happy. The FBI is happy. The prosecutor's happy. The community is happy. The families are happy. Nobody wants to know. And you think the same thing is true with Todd Kohlhepp. They're happy that even the people who know what he said was a lie, which is the families know he lied. I have no clue why the families are cooperating. I have never figured that part out. But whatever reasons, maybe they just can't stand dealing with it anymore. They just want it all to go away. And so those who hold the political power then can decide what the public will know. And so, yeah, is it public information? It's supposed to be. If it's a closed case, you can get a FOIA request and you can get the information. But I've had no luck, and I think only if I were a big, huge media outlet would I have a chance, and I'm not. So, isn't that something? I mean, there's something. This is again an educational channel. I can't fight everything in the world. I can't always prove myself right, or sometimes somebody will prove me wrong. But my point is, you see how things actually work. we don't actually
Right.
realize that. Let me see what Molly has to say here.
I was just going to say that I would like to switch gears and give Molly a chance here to.
Yeah, I saw this behind here and I couldn't read it at the same time. Pat, the case that has stymied me is the anthrax letter case. I've been doing additional reading and research and found the dates on the crazy letters you received after your TV appearance are suspect. Okay, let me see what you're saying here. The dates match founding dates of 3 Gamma 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 sorority dates, Monmouth, Illinois, University of California at San Diego, and I can never pronounce that. Is that La Jolla? Is that pronounced the
La Jolla.
huh?
La Jolla.
Oh, that's La Jolla? Hoya. Oh yeah, I guess it could. I've just never known how to pronounce things American style or Mexican, Spanish style, whatever. La Jolla. Oh, La Jolla. Okay, that sounds familiar. La Jolla, California, or in Hillsdale. Is that Missouri or Michigan? I'm not too good with those 2-letter things either. Gosh, I'm not bright tonight. Wait a minute, 3 dates matching the founding dates. Really?
That's
Wait a minute.
Michigan.
I'm confused. I've got to go back here. Molly, let me read this again.
It's Michigan. Missouri's MS.
Oh, and what's Mississippi?
MS.
And Missouri is
Oh, sorry, that's
MO.
Missouri.
Missouri's MO,
Mhm.
right? No, it's Montana. Wait a minute.
All right. I'll
Montana,
look 'em up.
Missouri, Mississippi, and
And I'll
Michigan.
look them up.
No, yeah. I have to look them up if I put them on an envelope. Oh, that's embarrassing. Okay, wait a minute. I'm going back to sick of this. Okay, if anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about here, the anthrax letter case. I did a show on the anthrax letter case, and it's on one of my videos. And the anthrax letter case, there was the guy they finally decided did it. And then he killed himself. So anyway, he's dead. But they decided it was him. Although there's a lot of questions about that. I did a television appearance, and after I did a television appearance, I got a letter, a very suspicious letter. That came from the same mailbox that the anthrax letter was mailed out of. And so it was really strange. And I went and investigated this guy, and so many things matched him to the anthrax guy. But I gave all the information to the FBI, and they just never even bothered. So you're saying that so Molly's saying that she looked at the dates on the crazy letters I received, and they matched the founding dates. Okay, wait a minute. I'm totally confused. Okay, Monmouth, Illinois is the first chapter. Oh, well. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't understand, but okay. Montana's MT. Okay. Missouri's MS. Okay, MT, MS. Michigan's MI, right? Right, and what's Mississippi? What's Mississippi? Wait a minute. Oh, I'm still confused. Okay, Molly, I don't understand what you're saying. Because they're talking about things, you're saying that this is matching, I don't understand. Wait a minute, I don't understand. You're saying, Molly, that the founding dates, what dates on the letters are you talking about? Okay, wait a minute. Hillsdale, a famous conservative college, had a huge scandal in 1999 that included the college president having an affair with his daughter-in-law who committed suicide. Okay, I'm still confused. Okay, wait a minute. MI is Michigan. MS is... Wait a minute. Missouri and Mississippi can't both be MS.
No, I corrected that.
Where is it?
Montana's MT, Missouri's MO, Mississippi is MS, Minnesota's MN,
Right.
Michigan is MI. Let me finish the M's. Massachusetts MA, Maryland's MD, and Maine is ME. That's why I don't want to call you, because I talk way too much. My God.
This is fun. Come on, this is the whole point of these. This is kind of just the call-in is just a fun night. You know what I mean?
Okay, good.
We have fun.
Excellent.
And this is the cool thing is, I never thought about the books as much as when you called tonight, and now that's really, really helping me I want to really point out that issue, and I'm going to try to figure out how I might even do a whole show on that, just the difference between the books, because this is it's a huge problem. Depending on what book you read is what you start believing. And it's, how do you know? History's like that too. I mean, though they say history belongs to the victor, because they'll just rewrite the whole history, that's what happens, So you're getting a specific viewpoint, and yet the truth could be the exact opposite. We have the same problem. Hold on a second, my nose itches. Am I lying?
Well, not only that, the viewpoints, you're getting the author's biases because they're people and they're influenced.
Correct. And also if you work a case, right, that's another thing. So, myself included, I work a case and I'm biased because I'm like, hey, wait a minute, this is I have this subjective feeling. So then you could say, well, then maybe you want a person not involved, like Catherine Ramsland. She's more objective. But is she? Or is her subjectiveness producing books that the publishers publish and aren't inflammatory, or are all pro FBI, or they're all pro police? So it gets tricky. It really does. I think what I find it's very helpful to some extent is like I've read the FBI books, I've read an independent profiler books, I've read detective books, and in doing so, that's why I said if I had to pick out the six books on serial killers, which is the best books on serial killers? The best one is Catching Serial Killers, which is done by a detective, a retired detective. I love that book. That is excellent.
What's his name?
Oh, I think you have to only get that book by way of it's been out of print forever. And his let's see, hold on a second here. Catching Serial Killers. I always forget the guy's name, even though I talked to him, and he's wonderful. But it's got a very simple name, so I keep confusing it with everybody else. Okay, here it is. It's called Earl James, E-A-R-L James. It's called Catching Serial Killers, Learning from Past Serial Murder Investigations. And it is...
I have another question,
1991.
Too.
Oh, look, you can get it used for $8.28.
Oh,
Awesome.
God, I'm on that.
Yeah.
Okay. How about the author of Tainting Evidence?
Tainting Evidence is John Kelly and Wern.
John Kelly?
Yeah. And
Kelley?
Yeah, Kelly and Warne. That's Tainting Evidence. And this one, there's an interesting thing in this book. They have a whole thing on the McDonald case and how I have to reread this because I actually just noticed it today. Whole thing on the McDonald case and how much of the evidence was screwed on that. I don't know if they're real pro-McDonald here, but he may be. This I think comes from a kind of an Innocence Project kind of viewpoint on, how the FBI and the police and all the labs are screwing over innocent people. I think there is a bent there, and I haven't read this in a long time, but I think sometimes you should read the people that maybe have a differing viewpoint, even an opposing viewpoint, even
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because
Catherine Ramsland.
Yes, it's exactly. But it's a devil's advocate thing to some extent. For example, it says here, for example, Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma City bombing. It says here, the FBI lab examiners worked backward from the evidence to prove guilt, following no protocols and ignoring precautions against contamination of evidence. And now, I'm not saying I know this is true, but this is their viewpoint. So I think it's interesting.
I'd like to know how they came to that conclusion.
I don't know.
That's what I'm interested
I
in.
haven't read. I have lots of notes in this book, things I scribbled and stuff. I think I read this in the 1990s. Yes, it was published in 1998. So I read this probably 20 years ago. And so I honestly don't know what I think today. You know what I'm saying? Because I did a lot of this in my early studies to learn about evidence and issues like that, because I was having difficulties with a couple cases of DNA evidence, which were really squirrely. And so I wanted to know how accurate that the evidence procedures were, and whether there was ever any fraud or contamination, or whether you could just claim something that wasn't even true. How often did that happen? And so Yeah, it's interesting to know, and again, it's educational.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what Molly says about this, because I just want to know. Oh,
Can I make a suggestion?
sure.
I would like for Molly to be able to have a chance to discuss the case she's talking about. Molly, are you in a position to call Pat? I think it would be a great opportunity to talk to her and address your case.
Let's see if she responds.
Oh, she was typing, probably.
She's typing. It says here, the letters you received are dated by the sender. Oh. Also, the postmark on the envelope containing the letters was Monmouth, New Jersey. Bruce Ivins used things associated with his obsession, KKG. Yeah, there was that KKG sorority thing, but there's no proof that the sorority thing had anything to do with, I don't think it had anything to do with the anthrax thing. Just because the mailbox was nearby as one of the sororities that he supposedly liked. That's their claim to why it's linked. I don't find value in that, because the guy that I was looking at also had connections to that exact mailbox too. So it's one of those things, you can you can find, this is what they're talking about sometimes when if you're looking for evidence, you can find evidence, but the evidence is not necessarily evidence. You know what I'm saying? You're looking for stuff. So let's say, why was Pat Brown at that mailbox? And they look across the street and they see an Indian restaurant. And they say, see? Pat Brown loves Indian food. It doesn't mean that's why I was at the mailbox, It just happens there's an Indian restaurant there. And then let's say the other person who's a suspect, that guy had a problem with his bike. Oh my God, there's a bike shop on the other side of the street. He must have been here for the bike shop. Again, it's not meaningful. So that there was a sorority nearby, and Ivan's had issues with sorority women, has nothing necessarily to do with the actual anthrax. So that was a stretch, you know what I'm saying? It's a stretch. Now, Ivan's was a screwy dude, you know what I mean? That guy's a whack job. He was a total whack job. Yeah. Had major issues, but there were a lot of people who worked with and said that there's just no way he was involved in this. Whack job though he was. And the guy that sent me the letters right after I went on to Fox and talked about the cases, he had the connections to that mailbox. And he was a biologist, and there were a lot of interesting things, and he was obsessed with crime cases and American media, and that was connected to one of the earlier letters was sent down to American media, and he got the National Enquirer, you know what I mean, in his mailbox. So, so there were a lot of things matching him. Now. But, and again, what's frustrating to me was not that, because when you get a suspect, I didn't plan to get that suspect. He sent me letters. And you know how creepy that was? To get that letter from that mailbox and open up that letter in my car and think, oh my God, there could have been anthrax in there. As soon as I opened it up and saw the letter, I went, oh my God, I'm dead. I really thought that for a second, because if there was anthrax in there, I would have been dead, right? Luckily there wasn't. But, these letters were so bizarre, and I gave them to the FBI and said, look into this guy, and I told them what happened. I sent them a nice letter, and they never followed up. And I know it because I went up to the college, and I spoke with the people at the college who knew the guy, and they gave me the information on him. And they said the FBI never came. And I'm like, this is way before Ivins was even a suspect. Why would the FBI not follow this up? I didn't make the crap up. I was on a show, and the guy sends me these letters from the mailbox you're worried about. It's like, and he's a biologist. Yeah. So go figure. So again, we will never know probably whether Ivins was the guy who sent the anthrax letters, because they're happy with that solution, and they've closed the case. And there it is. It just stays there, unless something just bizarre happens one day to disprove it. But my problem was when people think, oh, the FBI investigated that case so well, and I'm like, I know they didn't. I can tell you absolutely I'm disgusted with their investigation because I gave them a great suspect and they never even followed up to find out that he wasn't it. You know what I mean? They could have gone and said, okay, the guy's a real weirdo. He's got all these weird connections, but it's not him. Okay, you know. But if you don't follow up a really good suspect, then I don't think you're doing a very good job. You know, I understand if a psychic called in and said, I know who it is. It's Bob Smith who lives in, you know, someplace, you know. They're not going to follow that crap up. That's for good reason. But when a profiler who's just on TV gets strange letters from the mailbox, you don't follow that up? You know, that's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. As an investigator myself, as somebody who would investigate, I'd be all over that. Whether it pans out to be anything or not, I'd still be all over it. I would not leave that alone. You know, I'd say, oh, well, just ignore that. You know. So, I hate bad investigation. I hate when they just don't even bother. So yeah, it's very frustrating. But that's again, we don't often think that we know sometimes what's really going on, and we don't. And so it's frustrating. And we may never. But Molly says, I think your comments on TV right after the anthrax letters set off Bruce Ivins or his twin, your suspect, and he or the twin sent the crazy letters with the unspoken message, you're so smart, figure this out. Well, it wasn't Bruce Ivins. It wasn't. It was my suspect. Bruce Ivins didn't send those to me. I know who sent them because I went to the college. I found out who it was because what he did was he used the name of his roommate instead of his own name. And I was able to trace it back to the college that he worked at. He was a grad student. I mean, at that time, he was a PhD student at that time. And I was able to speak to his whoever handles the PhD people, who knew him and the roommate, and I was able to get all the information from them, and about his girlfriend who also worked with certain biological materials, who was lived near the mailbox. So I got all that information, and I sent that on to the police eventually, and they just never followed up. So unquestionably, I know who sent the letters to me. It was not Ivins. It was. I won't give his name because, of course, he's just, there's no reason to do that. I know who it was. I just know he was never investigated by the FBI, which I find appalling. So that's the frustrating part, that they didn't do their job. They just didn't, and that bugs me. But again, I think it's just interesting how we think we know things, but unless you sometimes have worked with a case and stuff, you know things other people don't know, and then you find out later. When I've gone into work on cases and I found out things, and oh my God, this is what really happened. I was like, wow, this is much more interesting because I didn't know that, but because what I read in the newspapers or what I saw on TV was not even a quarter of what really the information really is. So it's always hard to know the truth. But I think the most important thing about the truth is that the more we know that's accurate, the better we can do as far as future investigations or future psychology work. If you're trying to understand how psychopaths behave, you got to have the right behaviors. Otherwise, you're going to falsely follow information, and it's just not a good thing. That bugs me. Anyway, I think I'm going to wrap it up with that because I think that's great, but I'm going to do a thing. The book thing is just really interesting to me because you really made me think about that, Lisa, and I appreciate that.
I would like to, I like talking about books too, especially this subject. I would just like to leave you with one thought.
Sure.
Today on Netflix, I watched something called Bad Vegan. It's the story of a woman, Bad Vegan.
Right.
Sarma Melangalis, and I would love for you to find the time to watch it, and your thoughts on it, because I still find it fascinating.
What is the basic story on that, just so everybody knows what it is?
The basic story is that this woman was a self-made woman who studied economics, decided she loved food, self-made woman, millionaire, vegan, raw food, fresh food, owned a place called Pure Food and Wine, and it was expanding, and she was playing Words with Friends online,
right,
and met this guy, and they got friendly. Long story short, she marries him. He milks her and her mother for I think $6 million
Wow.
over a period of, I don't know. I want to say, let's see, 2012. She was talking about now.
Hmm.
I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
Uh-huh.
But she did this, and here is this intelligent woman whose father is a physicist, who is not a dummy.
Right.
She is this self-made woman, assertive, was known worldwide for having the only raw vegan restaurant.
Right.
I mean, not just a place you go in and sit. It was an atmospheric thing. The guy she got hooked up with was friends with or acquaintances with Alec Baldwin. All these movie stars that would come to her restaurant. She had pictures with all of them. Well, a few years later, after meeting this guy and marrying him, she ends up as a on the run fugitive. That's redundant. On the run with this guy. On the run. You make me laugh. On the run with this guy, traveling up to Canada, of all places. I think Canada. I mean, just.
Wow. Okay, I think that's gonna be my. I think I'm gonna watch that tonight, as a matter of fact,
Oh,
because that's
please watch
interesting.
it.
Yeah, you know.
Please watch it.
I'm gonna say this before I watch it, just because. Sometimes you wonder how, because you're just pointing out that this is not the case. So I may have to, after I see this, I may think totally differently. But sometimes I think what happens with people who have become very successful, there's these levels in society like this, right? And once people get to these high levels, and I don't mean high by any kind of, it's nothing to do with how good you are, you know what I mean? When I say high level society, it's like the majority of us are in a certain, kind of regular, I call regular stuff, regular folk, you get up, you have children and a family, and you're a teacher over here, and the guy's working, he runs a tire shop, you know what I mean? And you go to baseball games on the weekends, you do normal stuff. And then there are people who get to the point where either it's money that takes them up a level, or it's fame that takes them up a level, or it's the media that takes them up a level. And I know this from doing television work, that when you go into this, even into the studios, like, for example, they call me up and they'll say, Pat, we want you to come to New York. I want you to do this television show, like the Today Show, for example. I've done the Today Show many times. Okay, so a limo comes to my door. I jump into it. Takes me to. I don't like to fly up to New York. I prefer to take the Acela train because it goes right into Penn Station. It's real quick and it's pleasant, So I jump on the Acela train, and I get to sit in the good seats, and you get a table and you get the internet, you know what I mean, and you get business people in there, that are all, because I can pay the extra money for the Acela train, right? So and you don't get criminal. Sometimes when I've ridden like Amtrak from like Florida up there, and I had a woman next to me, and she's like, "Yeah, my boyfriend, he just got shot down," and I'm like. And she was cussing she was like saying an MF word every 3 seconds. Everybody's turning around. I'm like, I don't know the woman, but apparently she's on the run. Speaking of on the run, I think she was. She's trying to cross state line.
Right.
Anyway, that's regular seats on Amtrak, but you're up in Acela. So anyway, now you get in the Acela section, and then you arrive at Penn Station, right? I walk out, and there's a car pulls up with my name in the window, Pat Brown. And the driver gets out with his hat on and says, Miss Brown, and he puts me in the limo, puts me in there, takes me off to a nice hotel, and then I'm welcomed into the hotel, and I have a nice dinner that night in a good restaurant, and the next day the limo comes back, picks me up, takes me to a television, the Today studio, Today Show, and I come in, and and then you get your hair done, you get your makeup done, then you're sitting there with Meredith, on the sofa, and that's a whole different world, you know what I mean? Then my normal world in Maryland. You know, what I normally do in Maryland. You know, I go play pickleball with my friends. You know, it's like this is my normal life, but this television life, which I lived for almost a decade, you know, doing television 2 or 3 times a day and traveling, and it's this. And I was never comfortable in it because I'm kind of a weirdo anyway, so I didn't really match the people that were in the world. I didn't match clothing-wise or my interests, and, you know, didn't talk about the purse I just bought in Paris. I never could figure that crap out because I'm a profiler. I'm not a, you know, I don't know, glamour girl, you know. So it was a weird world. I understood it. I was around it, but it wasn't me. But I saw people caught up in it. You know what I mean? Caught up in that whole world and the glamour of it, and the limos and the fancy food and meeting all the top people. You know, walking in a studio and you get to meet the people that most people never meet, right? Most people don't get to meet, you know, Oprah. You know what I'm saying? They don't. So, but, you know, here, if you work in television, you're meeting those people, you run into them in the green room, you're introduced to them, you know, and then if people are even more, I'm not very social in that world. So I didn't go to tons of book signings and parties and stuff like that, you know. I didn't ingratiate myself with people. So, I mean, most of my friends were actually the limo drivers. You know, I got along. The limo drivers and security guards are like the people I got along with. But because
they open it. They open the first episode with her saying things like, what I went through is not very well known in the courts or law enforcement or even the medical world. And the premise is, was it a Stockholm Syndrome situation, or was she in on it?
Oh, that's going to be interesting, yeah.
At some point, if you decide to watch
I'm going to start it tonight. I really am. I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, do it, because you won't be able to stop watching. Well, I'm not going to tell you what I think. Text me and tell me what you think. Okay. Because I'm dying to know what your take is on it. I'm up at all hours, so I'm waiting.
Well, I'm always curious to say when people say basically what I was just trying to say is this: you're in this world, and then when people get into these other worlds. Where they're running around with all this money and fame and fortune, they get sucked into a completely different and sometimes bizarre lifestyle. They get taken by people who they consider cool people that now they're associated with at this level, and it gets it's almost an addictive, a very strange world. And that's what a lot of the Hollywood stars, you read about them, you think, what's wrong with you guys? It's because they're living in this completely different planet, you know. They really are. And I think sometimes they've had, you know, it's like drugs. They've had the drugs. They keep escalating to the point where they need more and more and more and more, and the regular stuff doesn't cut it anymore. They have to keep, you know, get more excitement, more glamour, more whatever they think they got to get more of, because they've had so much. You know, you get so much, and then it's, where do you go from there? You know,
where do you go from there?
Yeah. So I will take a look. Let me see what Molly said before I head off here. Molly says, I read Mirage Man by David Willman. He does speak briefly of a prior colleague of Ivan's who lived around Princeton. Yeah, that's interesting. My suspect was with Princeton, but I don't think that's his prior colleague, because the guy was a PhD student. He was going for the PhD. So I think he was in his last year getting the PhD. He was almost a doctor, whatever. But I don't think I think Ivans is way older than him. But he could have been a buddy, I guess. They could have, you know what I mean? I always wondered, because I always believed the guy who wrote the letter to me, or was it I always believed that whoever wrote the letters rode the train between Princeton and D.C., which my suspect did, by the way, because he also went to Howard University, and he had relatives in Maryland, so he did come back and forth. That's very, very complicated. I did not like his prior colleague.
To put it mildly, right?
Yeah. It's a fascinating case, and I don't know that we'll ever know whether Ivans absolutely was the guy or not. But I just know the FBI didn't do their job. That's all. That's my whole complaint, that they didn't do their
Molly,
job.
do you have an extra interest in this case?
Huh?
The anthrax? I'm wondering if Molly if that's one of the cases she has particular interest in.
Who?
Molly.
Oh, yes, Molly does seem to be interested in it, yes. Molly said that. She said she found that a fascinating case. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't.
Yeah, and
I wasn't paying
and
attention.
when she was saying that I had done when she saw my video, she found it, let's see what she said. Let's see, we go through Molly. She said, yes, the case that stymied me is the anthrax letter case. I've been doing additional reading and research and found the dates on the crazy letters you received after your television appearance. Yeah, so she had seen my video on the anthrax case, and which was, which I just want to say, it was kind of a relief to be able to do that because, when this happened, this is all in secret, right? I never could tell that story. Who was I going to tell the story to? The FBI didn't even do their job, So, but it was just so interesting, and I'm like, so now they have my YouTube channel. You see, I don't have to ask CNN for permission to talk. I get to talk here, do my own stuff, and bring in things out to people that they may never have a clue about, because these are the things that the major media won't allow out there. Just like they wouldn't allow the Superbike information, even though I had evidence, even though I had proof and sent the proof straight to them. They made a determination not to present the truth. And because of that, where am I going to get that information out if none of the major media will do it? So I put it on my YouTube show, and it doesn't mean anybody's ever going to do anything with it, but I can always have the hope that one day somebody will come along and say, she proved that on the YouTube show that Todd Cole didn't know what happened at that crime scene. Maybe I can get lucky one day and somebody will take it up, you know what I mean? Somebody with money and power. Otherwise, at least I just get to say my piece. No. So I'm going to go right now. I'm going to go watch the recommendation, and I think
I hope you enjoy it.
That's going to be fun. So thank you for calling in, Lisa. I see you're always
You're
fun
welcome.
to talk
It's
to.
been a pleasure, Pat. It's always a pleasure.
Well, you always bring up something interesting, and it's always something fun to come up.
Well, good. I'm glad.
Oh wait.
I'm glad. I love talking to you.
Oh, thank
Love
you.
it.
Oh, let's say Molly says, I think that case is almost forgotten now. Yeah, it is. But it set the country crazy, a huge cost and no definitive answer. That is absolutely correct, Molly. You're right. So anyway, I'll be back on Thursday for the regular hangout. That is the early one. It's the 3 o'clock one. No, sorry, 4 o'clock. It's my UK special, I call it, because the UK people are awake. Maybe Benny's awake. And then this weekend, on Sunday, I'm going to be doing the Adam Walsh case. Who actually did it? Because there's basically two big suspects, and John Walsh picked one of them as the one he thought did it. And I'll be reviewing the two different suspects and where I come on, who I think is more likely to have done it, or if I think neither one of them did it. So I don't know yet. I have to really study that case again. So anyway, thank you guys for being here, and this was fun. And
thank you for answering all of my questions. All of
you're just gonna be reading. You're just gonna be reading yourself to death, aren't you, Lisa? No. But wait till I come up with the books you really should read. No. No. But I do want to eventually get that list and why these are books that are more valuable to read than a lot of other books.
Absolutely. That's what I want.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm always asking for the authors.
I know. I'm trying to get to the point where I can get everything together, but there really isn't enough time in the week. There really isn't. It's like,
I know that.
It's insane.
And I appreciate you taking the time out to entertain me for over 2 hours.
Oh,
I do appreciate it. I love it so much.
You're welcome for that. So anyway, it was great having you call in, and thank you very much. And now I'm going to head out to go watch that show. All right, and I'll see you guys maybe on Thursday. Okay, bye. Bye, everybody.